Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about why the government wants your Bitcoin. Basically, we've already seen a war started over this, and I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger. This, in my opinion, could lead to some pretty crazy appreciation in the price of Bitcoin, just because I think we're getting into a point in time where there's going to be a lot of institutions, a lot of governments, potentially a lot of adversarial governments, all trying to stack as many Bitcoins or as much Bitcoin as they can. So it's going to be very interesting to see. So we've got a whole bunch of different articles to go over today, talking about kind of the state of institutional and governmental adoption. It's pretty surprising. We've already seen, even in just less than a year, I guess at this point, I guess it's been just over a year of the Bitcoin ETF being out. We've seen a lot of interesting stuff. So I want to go ahead and talk about a little bit what we're seeing there today. Things are pretty interesting. So we'll dive right in. We'll start out with taking a look at the states. So we got states, we've got companies, we got institutions, we got governments, we got all the things trying to get their hands on some Bitcoin. So what we can see here is that the states are actually there's a lot of them that are really getting serious about looking into Bitcoin. We can see here on these like checkered ones or the lined ones. I don't know what we're going to call this, but these are they're officials discussing significant proposals. And then the yellow ones are going to be active legislation weighing investments in some capacity. And then the green ones are going to be investing retirement funds in Bitcoin ETFs. So we can see Wisconsin and Michigan already actively investing retirement funds. And then the yellow ones are talking about kind of some sort of like legislative efforts to add Bitcoin to the state's balance sheet. Now, if we look here, we can actually see on a state-by-state basis where all of these different states are at. So we can see Utah actually the furthest along in terms of getting to some Bitcoin strategic reserve adoption. We can see here Arizona appearing to be the second. It's looking like this actually may have failed already in both North Dakota and Wyoming. We'll have to see exactly, what that means. If there's more to go from here, or if that's just kind of it, and that's all it is. Hard to say for sure, but we can see things definitely kind of moving, or at least starting to move in several different states. We can see a whole bunch of other ones here kind of introduced, but not actually like starting through the legislative process yet. So a couple of different things here that are interesting and noteworthy, but we can see actually right here, the proposal has already been rejected in Wyoming and North Dakota. So looks like it may not be happening with these, but if we do return back to the map, we can see, I believe this is 21 or 22 states off my memory based on what like the article heads or the article titles were saying. We can see still several states, a lot of gray in here. So there's potentially the opportunity for a lot of other states to get involved and get in on the action here. So we can see a decent chunk of the South still missing here. Basically the entire West Coast still missing. And then some parts of the interior. I would say the majority of the interior of the country is actually kind of proceeded along with this. New Mexico, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota kind of only being the five in the middle that we haven't seen too much from. I guess if we wanted to add Arkansas and Louisiana there, we could as well, but I'd probably throw those in with the South, to be honest. So then we're also seeing, some limited adoption here in the Northeast. Really, New Hampshire and Massachusetts kind of being the only two. Pennsylvania, if we're going to include that, I would include it in the Rust Belt. What we can see in the Rust Belt is definitely like really, really strong adoption in this area. So I'd say the Rust Belt and kind of the Midwest / Mountain West is kind of where we're seeing most of the adoption coming at this point. It'll be interesting to see kind of where we go next from here, right? And so now I want to talk a little bit about kind of the Bitcoin treasuries and who actually holds what in terms of Bitcoin supply with regard to institutions, governments, all that type of stuff. However, before we do that, if you are looking to start building a Bitcoin strategic reserve of your own, I do have that link to BTCC in the description below. They are doing that 10% bonus on first-time deposits, which is a really, really good deal. They are also doing the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So BTCC really looking to throw a whole bunch of money at you to come and trade on their site, which is pretty cool. Definitely a really, really great offer. That's why I've been working with BTCC for so long is because I do think that this is a really nice offer. There are other exchanges that I am working with, but BTCC definitely, in my opinion, has kind of provided the strongest offer, at least for right now. No VPN or KYC necessary as well, which is another good thing that I know is important to a lot of people. So anyway, if you are interested, like I said, just check the link in the description below, and then you can go ahead, get signed up, and start acquiring and stacking your own sats. So now moving on, let's take a quick look at what we're seeing from institutional adoption / holdings here. So what we can see is there are 123 entities holding over 3 million Bitcoin with a total value of almost $300 billion. This is 14.5% or just shy of 14.5% of the total supply of Bitcoin. This is a very, very substantial amount of Bitcoin that has been acquired really over the past couple of years, more than anything else. This is very, very impressive. We can see 1.35 million Bitcoin already held within the ETFs. This was zero, less, or I guess just over a year ago, right? And so 6% already being acquired by ETFs in the span of 1 year. Very, very impressive. A whole bunch of institutional adoption coming in from the ETFs. We can see countries here holding an additional 500,000 Bitcoin. Again, if countries really start, I think from my understanding, most of this is confiscated Bitcoin from illicit activities of way in the past. But if countries do actually start to establish strategic reserves and want to start accumulating Bitcoin of their own, you need to remember there's only 21 million Bitcoin that can ever exist. So it's very much a zero-sum game when it comes to stacking and acquiring Bitcoin. So it'll be very interesting to see if we start to see countries kind of starting to introduce their own strategic reserves, we could see this number balloon quickly, which of course would impact the price in a very positive way, which is cool. And then here we can see public companies holding an additional 632,000, private companies an additional 368,000 after that. So here we could see companies themselves almost holding an additional million Bitcoin cumulatively, and then Bitcoin companies holding 90,000 and DeFi about 150,000. So all of this does add up to the over 3 million Bitcoin that are held by different entities and institutions, totaling that 14.5%. So a pretty impressive number here. I mean, the institutional adoption that we have seen has come very, very quickly, in my opinion, in terms of institutional adoption terms, at least. So this is pretty interesting. What we can see as well here is this is kind of after we're seeing a pretty substantial amount of outflows in the past couple recent days for Bitcoin. So we're starting to see some interesting levels of outflows for Bitcoin. Just yesterday, or I think this might have been 2 days ago, we saw $251 million flowing out of Bitcoin. There's been a lot of weird things happening. People have been stacking ridiculous amounts of Ethereum. So maybe this is kind of transitioning to ETH. Maybe some people know something that we don't. Hard to say for sure, but definitely some of the momentum slowing down a little bit for Bitcoin. However, I do say that kind of fully understanding that we are still seeing immense amount of inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. So the net inflows here are still incredibly positive. Like I was just showing back here, 1.35 million Bitcoin acquired in just over a year. That is very impressive. So something to consider there, and just keep an eye on. The other thing I wanted to take a quick look at here is we can also see that these are the Bitcoin hodl waves, right? And so this shows you at this point in time, this purple box or whatever you want to call it, this is people that have been holding for between 7 and 10 years. This box is 5 to 7 years. This, I'm calling it a box. It's not a box. It's like a bubble area, I guess. I'm going to just call it this area. This area is 3 to 5 years. This area is 2 to 3 years. This one's 1 to 2 years. This one is 6 to 12 months, 3 to 6 months, 1 to 3 months, 1 week to 1 month, 1 day to 1 week, and then 24 hours. And then way down here at the bottom, I don't even know if it's gonna let me. Yeah, I don't think it's even gonna let me show it. But oh yeah, here we can also see it lined out along the bottom here as well. So, but the thing that I wanted to focus on here is how many people are holding for a very, very long period of time. We can see here, at about this range, we're sitting at just over 50%. So over 50% of people have held their Bitcoin longer than 1 year, which is really impressive, right? I mean, half of the people are not looking or not actively selling their Bitcoin. Now, if we go down to this range, we can see actually almost 75% of all Bitcoin holders have held their Bitcoin for longer than 3 months. So this is not, and I know 3 months is not like a huge amount of time. This would have been, what is this, like prior to the beginning of November. So if, basically 75% of Bitcoin holders are in profit, which is really cool. I mean, at least 75%, maybe even more, right? But this is pretty impressive numbers, right? There's a lot of people here that are buying Bitcoin, they're holding Bitcoin, and at least from what it seems, they have no intention of selling anytime soon, which is very encouraging to see. I think what we are going to see eventually, again, who knows, this is kind of one of those slowly then all at once type of things. But I think at some point we're going to kind of have this scale tip, and there's just going to be a mad dash for Bitcoin. I think something like, frankly, I think the best situation for the price of Bitcoin would be China kind of fully embracing Bitcoin and the US fully embracing Bitcoin and having a little bit of an arms race over who can acquire the largest Bitcoin stockpiles. This is what I would call like a neo-mercantilism type of thing, because it's all about owning as much Bitcoin as possible, because that is how, I guess a version of the way that like your national or sovereign wealth could be indicated. And so if that is something that is to come to pass, that would be massively bullish for crypto and would very, very likely send the price of crypto skyrocketing. Because remember, it's a zero-sum game. To buy Bitcoin, you have to essentially have somebody to sell it to you. And there are so many people who are hugely bullish on Bitcoin and have no intention of selling anytime soon. There's a lot of really, really die-hard Bitcoin fans out there. Plus, we also have to consider the fact that there is a lot of Bitcoin that has been lost, right? I mean, people have forgotten their wallets, the computers are broken, hard drive irrecoverable, all that type of stuff. So there's a lot of different things coming out here that is kind of choking down the supply even more than it already is. And so we could potentially, if you think about it, if all of the Bitcoin was in supply, which is not, it's going to keep emitting out until the year 2140. And also, if all of the wallets were active, which we also know it's not, I think there's estimates anywhere between like 2.5 to 4 million Bitcoin that are likely lost. Again, nobody knows for sure because it's trustless and permissionless, but that's kind of the estimates based on kind of when Bitcoin was last moved within those wallets. And so if that assumption is correct, but and everything was on the liquid market right now, there would only be 21 countries that could hold 1 million Bitcoin or more. Or I guess I should say 21 million or 21 entities, right? You want to expand that a little bit, there could only be 210 entities that could individually hold 100,000 Bitcoin, 2,100 to hold 1,000 Bitcoin, stuff like that, all the way down to there's only 21 million people on the planet, or 21 million entities on the planet that could own one whole Bitcoin. So at some point in time, holding one whole Bitcoin, I think, could be very, very impressive and kind of like a badge of honor. So I think that's kind of the direction that we're heading. And as we get there, it's going to be very, very hard to acquire a whole Bitcoin. And that's why we're starting to talk a little bit more in sats or Satoshis, is because that's kind of like the penny to the Bitcoin's dollar. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at here. I think there's a very reasonable possibility that we do see kind of this mad dash for Bitcoin kick off relatively soon. Again, I don't know the future. This is not financial advice. There's nothing that I know that you guys don't with regards to being able to tell the future. So, just always keep that in mind that, I don't actually know for sure, but I do think that there is a very strong argument to be made that we could see some pretty impressive things coming out of the out of some Bitcoin like price action and news and all that type of stuff in the relatively near future. At least that's my opinion. We'll have to see. I think the US embracing it is probably going to be kind of that kicking off point. But again, like I said, who knows? But hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe, because it really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, concerns, whatever, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.